Welcome to Vlog Thursday number 302. Did I get the numbering right? Is it 302? That feels correct. I can always change it in post. I can't change what I said in post, but I can change the numbers. Let's see, is that line up? No, it should be 303. Wow. Okay, 303. I think we can actually edit that. So wait, I can edit. Does it change dynamically if we do this? 303. Sweet. I know what number it is. Save changes. There we go. 303. We updated. I actually have something pulled up because I want to start with, as I've been wanting to start with, where can you find Tom? And not just on Thursdays, where can you find Tom? Where can you find Tom other than Thursdays? Like, is there events he's at? Yes, I'm going to be at the Acronis Cyberfit thing, event thing. It's probably a title. Do they have the date in here? I'm flying on Sunday to Miami to go to this. And somewhere, if you Google this, where's their CyberFit Summit? I Googled it, and apparently I didn't land on the right page. Well, anyways, if you're going to be at the Acronis CyberFit Summit in Miami, that's going to be, let me look at the dates. I know it's this Sunday, and that is going to be, so we have a more accurate date. I'll be there the 7th and 8th of November. I fly in early to, I don't know, be in Miami, I guess. So that's where you'll find me Monday and Tuesday. Then after that, I know where I'll be, and I have the information correct on this one. Paste this in. I will be at the IT Nation Connect November 9th through 11th in Orlando. So I'm going to be in Florida for a few days. So if you want to see me, come say hi, whatever. I like saying hi to people, and it's fun. I go to these events really to interact with people. I don't need more products. I just like hanging out with my friends, but I do a lot of learning there. That's the biggest thing, is going to these events, is to go hang out, learn. Specifically at the Acronis CyberFit event, I'll actually be interviewing. It's part of a sponsorship thing that Acronis is working out with me, and I'll be just talking details with people and diving into the tech and bring in some educational content brought to you by Acronis. I'll be saying that, but hey, whatever, they want to sponsor some education, why not? That's a lot of times what I'm reaching out to and lining up myself with some more sponsors, is to bring some more educational content. I think I'm going to have to hire some more people for my YouTube channel. And it kind of starts with sponsors, because I got to realize that this is more than just a hobby. And I can't just take people away from the whole, my business to keep messing with YouTube. I kind of probably should make it official and hire people directly to help me test products and everything for YouTube. But that actually comes with expenses, because I always hear people say get interns, and I never like the idea of just having people work for me for free. I've always liked to pay the people that work for me. So yeah. Am I leaving Sentinel-1 for Acronis? The answer is no. Even though it's going to be sponsored by Acronis, I'm not leaving Sentinel-1. I will be talking about some of their DLP products and things like that, but I'm going to be talking about it from an engineering perspective. They're fine with that. They completely know what products I use. We've had conversations. So this isn't a change my mind or whatever, as much as it's a, hey, let's just talk about the technical things. I'm going to be interviewing some other people that are involved in making the products and technical details and how they think about things. If you choose to use Acronis, I don't think you got bad products or anything like that. But hey, it's one of those things. And I see someone else, and I agree with this as well. Like I never do unpaid interns. I always pay them real wage. Yeah, even if they're real wage, and sometimes is either a smaller contract, especially when you're talking about, like, I have one of my son's friends was, I have no problem hiring him, and he only needs something for his start in with his college career in tech. But I'm like, I'll pay him something basic while he learns, because he's not, I don't know where his skill level is. He's still learning, but he's fascinated by tech. So I'm like, hey, why not? Yeah. Travis, one of our office, one of the trusted members of my team, he knows that we just signed some new deals. I don't know when I can talk about some of the new stuff coming up. But soon I will be able to, but it's still Sentinel-1. It's just how things are going. So yes. A lot of people have been using Acronis as a backup product for a long time. It's a good backup product in terms of like cloning. I mean, that's where they got their big start in success, but they've expanded out to other products. So we'll be talking about that, and I'll be at their event. So the final event that I will be at will be this one here. As far as I know, I haven't seen a reason not to go. And Jay will probably be joining me. Me and Jay will carpool. Jay from Learn Linux TV, and that's going to be the Ohio Linux Fest. I got to get that booked because I got to make sure the hotel's still available. I didn't book my hotel for it. That's the reason I say it's slightly tentative. I will. Jay just got back from a conference himself, and I will be meeting with Jay from Learn Linux TV tomorrow. We're going to hang out with a few of our other friends, and we'll be discussing some of our plans because I'll book the hotel and take care of it tomorrow. So then it'll be official. So there's all my travel plans. That's yeah, that is all the announcements I really have. So all right. I know things and I drink beer. Yes, I drink and know things. That's the today. I should have put the craft computing shirt on. I think I had it on last week because I got my Voodoo Ranger. Not a sponsor, but if they want to, they could just send me free beer and I'd be happy. I'd show that I'm drinking it. Voodoo Ranger makes some of my favorite beers. I can't stop. It's by New Belgium. I'm not quite the beer connoisseur as our friend Jeff from Craft Computing is, but I do enjoy uh, some of these bitter IPAs. All of us started somewhere. Now CTO started off as help desk one, taking trash out, moving stuff from point A to point B. Clicks when it pops up. Yeah, I'm still the janitor. I have to mop it up occasionally. So you kind of go from a curve of doing things, and eventually you're just the janitor. So what's errata? Errata is the part where I go off topic and just talk about all the errata. It's just all the miscellaneous things after I talk about the topics I wanted to cover. Speaking of it, let's go ahead and jump into a topic I wanted to cover. I did not do a dedicated video on this, and there's a reason why that we'll talk about as well, because I like to test things. Yeah, BS. It's when Tom just BS and talks about things. That's the errata part of this entire conversation. Zen Orchestra and happy Halloween from the team over there. Got some pumpkins to look at, but they have this Halloween some new updates, faster backups, and this is pretty cool too. Now, I didn't test this because I just haven't had time. The network block device stuff. I like that they're really putting a lot of performance engineering into Zen Orchestra. This is among those things, and it's basically using MBD to understand or have the Zen Orchestra talk to the file system in a better, more efficient way for backups. This is great. And the backup performance has been really good since we moved over to these Ryzens. Hence, see video about us, recent video I just posted on that for the specs and the servers and everything else. But they're really just doubling down on tuning all the little features of this to make it more and more attractive to be a holistic system. And this is one of the things that, I see people. I seen some weird comments on this and dumb arguments, so we'll get into those later. But the Zen Orchestra system offering a fully integrated backup along with management of all your virtual machines makes it a pretty awesome system. And it also changes your thoughts on how total cost of ownership looks like, because when you can do all of your backups without a third-party tool, you save money on that third-party tool, as well as the licensing fees that you are paying to a company such as VMware, who has made some dramatic increases, and which has caused more and more people to go, hey, Zen seems really, really reasonable at this point, because, well, VMware seems less and less reasonable, and the performance is getting better, the feature sets are getting deeper, the agentless full virtual machine backup is pretty cool because you're managing it via, talking directly to the Zen server via Zen Orchestra. That is just makes for a beautiful arrangement, in my opinion, because I don't have to deal anything on my backups in terms of like loading agents or management. And that's where some people think there's a problem. And I'm like, no, that's not a problem. That's actually a benefit, being able to do it, because I can just grab, restore, move virtual machines around with the backups. And once again, this is more enhancement for there. Now, I haven't really done this, but they do have a cloud init system. Um, it's pretty cool. I should probably sit down and play with it at some point in time. And if you're not familiar with what cloud init is, I think Jay from Learn Linux TV has a video on there. It's a way to build your VMs and have it basically attach this cloud init config to push different settings into the VM as you build them. So as you clone these VMs, it goes, hey, what are these things in there? Like putting your SSH keys in or certain config files that you may want. That's a pretty neat one. And they're improving more features around that. Improved backup encryption. I haven't really used the backup encryption, but I think it's pretty cool that they have it. Um, I it's a kind of a new feature, so I'm a little bit nervous about it. I encrypt my virtual machines. So because my virtual machines themselves are encrypted, I don't worry about the encrypting of the backups themselves. But as this matures, and yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty cool feature, and they're uh, pretty cool that they're building all this in so you can also have encrypted backups, because something people really wanted for a security policy, and it makes sense. Evolution of the cache system for VM restore. This is something that I'll actually show this and demo this. It's just really indexes fast, especially when you're like us and we have a larger lab. Indexes all the backups really fast. Exolite is coming along. Exolite is the light version of ZenOrchestrategies. Strategies. You don't have to install as a VM. This has been a request for a long time that you can just set up a Zen server and control it through a web interface without having to load something extra as a virtual machine. And I get that for people that want to run this in a lab. So as this product comes along too, that I'm really excited about that. Now, this they also changed the way the licenses work too. I think this is actually kind of cool. You can make it easier to sign and port, assign an entire pool support automatically. They do offer licensing for support. This is a license feature that does not get you anything extra other than support. I want to be clear on that, because someone last week had made a statement that if you don't buy the license, you can't have certain features. And I'm like, no, they are completely 100% open source and all the features are unlocked. You just don't get support with the if you compile it yourself and do open source. I mean, and that's kind of be expected. At what point would you expect a company to, I mean, they have forums. It's not like there's no support. You're hanging in the wind here. They have really solid documentation. I have a lot of good videos on it. Between my videos, documentation, which my videos are also part of the documentation. If you go to the visual docs, you can run a solid hypervisor here, fully open source, without paying any license fees. And it's something I really encourage home lab people to do. And someone's going to say, what about Proxmox? Use it. I don't hate Proxmox at all. Just because I prefer XCP and G doesn't mean I don't like Proxmox. I think Proxmox is a good choice as well. So throw that out there for people looking for open source things. What's a good open source VDI gateway? I don't understand what you're trying to do. What's a VDI gateway? What is your goal? You talked me into transitioning XCP&G from VMware. What are some of the third-party plugins? I don't really know what third-party plugins there are. There might be some. I take that back. There's Netbox as a third-party plugin. I think there's a Nagios plugin as well, but I don't use Nagios, so I've never used it. I'm not sure what other plugins there are. I'm not an expert on that part of it. But last thing on here, and this is where some discussion will occur. This was just cool. It's just XOA check, add NTP time sync. Cool. But over here, XO logs to external syslog. And I think they fixed this. Yes, they did. The typo has been fixed. I copied and pasted a typo. I didn't know there was a typo because it is logged at transport and it's supposed to be logs that transport. What does that actually mean though? And let's talk about how you interact with people to get the proper outcome. I've joked about this before about trying to figure out, should I do a video on this topic? And basically the topic would be, how do you do the actual interaction with someone so you can get a problem fixed? I try to provide them a really extensive, I know what questions they're going to ask. And please note, in their forums, I'm an ambassador. I think that's cool. So let's talk about the process of Tom troubleshooting this. So I really like this feature, but I'm having issues getting it to work. And, there's my first statement. I assume this goes, and I always say assume because they just said in there, put it in the config file. I assume it goes in the config.toml file located in opt XO server for XO community or user bin node XO server for the XO appliance. And you see Tom pasted log.transport.syslog target equals TCP. I have tested both on XO and XO community. Neither worked. I don't have any error message in the log files stating the config is incorrect. I have our syslog set up working, so I know I'm able to reach the log server and send data. Also, I've assumed I can do this UDP by changing the prefix to UDP instead of the TCP prefix. One of the things I do is I never try to make hard statements when I'm doing it. I said, these are my assumptions. I'm based on your blog post. And also letting them know I know how to talk to the log server because, well, it's also using syslog to talk to it. So we've kind of sorted out those things. So Oliver, head of the team, pings on Julian, someone else commented on running the same issue. He agreed. First of all, you can use UTP CP. Yes. Do you have an X-Way support ticket? We went through that. There's my tunnel support ticket I have with them. So I let them remote into this particular system I set up in my lab. And this is where he says, hey, there's a typo on our blog post in our sample config. It's logs, not log. So that S missing, computers are so picky about these things. You got to spell things correctly. And then he also said, don't change it in XO service directory, change it in XO server. I fixed it to you and restart. But then I said, hey, still not working. Then he linked me to a GitHub post, which is great because he realized there was a split log feature. And this is where we can, I'll pull it back over here. Well, I'll show you down here. I replied that it's working, but he also linked to the GitHub post. And for those of you running into this, you need to actually load these extra packages. The split log package, which is part of their, is it called Yarn? Package start, XO server patch, JSON. Yeah, it's in the Yarn package registry for this. So a couple extra packages they must have had in a development environment that were missing from the primary environment. But the important thing is that you give them good data. You don't just attack them. This is a weird thing I see people doing is just saying, your system's garbage. It doesn't work. And I'm like, no. My goal is to have an outcome that benefits one, so they understand my scenario and why it's not working for me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong is how I always start. Even though I'm pretty well versed in a lot of this stuff, I still start with, I might be wrong because I think it sends the right message to them. Like, hey, check my configs. Did I do it right? I also provide them all the information. So there's less back and forth. You don't want to stress out the people providing support. So don't say it doesn't work because boy, I've been going through and spending some time in the forums and it's mind numbing seeing some of the stuff in there because Windows don't work. What doesn't work? It doesn't load. What doesn't load? Is there an error message? Like there's so much effort put into it. And I'm like, these should be technical people doing this. This is how you interact. Well, this is how I interact. This is how people who really care about getting it done interact. But yeah, but that's, hopefully that clarifies that. But this is why I didn't do a video right away is that this wasn't working. Now it works, by the way. You can export everything to your syslog server properly right out of Zen natively without sending our syslog to it. That's a long way of saying that, I think. But I always like to talk about the interactions I try to have with people to try to have a better outcome when it comes to all this. Because the goal is I'm not a good coder at all. There's a reason I don't code. I'm bad at it, and I don't have the interest in being good at it. I don't want to put the effort in. I'm just going to be honest. But I do like creating documentation and helping the community out when it comes to open source projects. So that's why I talk so much about how we engage with people online and we make our discourse less coarse, so we have a better interaction with all the teams involved so we can have working products. So I just got a job in IT department looking to do a lot of cleanup on the tech stack. The previous guy outright left. Pros and cons of moving current VMs from VMware to XCMG if possible. First, never, unless you know the environment well, if this is production, if just because Tom says XCPNG is cool, if you don't know the product, you're going to have a bad time. So make sure you have very much familiarize yourself with one, the current needs of the client or your customer or the place you work, the needs of the systems you're maintaining. Make sure you understand those needs. Then make sure you understand XCPNG, for example. And as long as you have a clear understanding of the needs and a clear understanding of whether or not XCPNG fits those needs, then you can look at the alignment of whether or not you move away from VMware. Are they using any particular things in VMware that is VMware unique or tied to it in a special way? One of the things you have to make sure, I mean, from a migration standpoint, yeah, just download the VMware tools and migrate the VMs. I've talked about cloning VMs using tools, really any cloning tool, even insert name Acronis, like we said at the beginning here. By using any of those cloning tools, you can take and clone those over to another instance of a different hypervisor. So it's not a big deal to do, but it will not look well on you if you are not well versed in the product and you don't have good support for it. Also, if you're using this commercially for a business, I really recommend buying commercial support from the XCP-NG team in order to help facilitate and make your life easier. Because you want to have someone who can, backstop you when it comes to if there's a problem or if there's a challenge you face on those. So. Proxmox has some things to fix, such as when it backs up, it's hard to read the entire disk, including empty space instead of detecting changes. Poorly done, even with the new backup server. Yeah, I've never used it, so, and I'll assume that's what people are doing. VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure. XUG will back up in a second. Proxmox has to read the entire disk, detect what's sparse. Yeah, well, actually, let's play with some backups in a second and talk about that. I'm looking to connect thin clients to VMs. I'm looking like UDS Enterprise. There's not. If you have to use Windows as your base, there's not a lot out there for thin clients. Thin clients are a band-aid on building web applications. Like, well, we're going to use QuickBooks through VDI. Why? Because, well, QuickBooks Online isn't good yet. So a lot of applications are like that. VDI infrastructure is kind of like this temporary band-aid to get things into the cloud, publish applications. Native new programs are not built with VDI. Any startup writing a new application today is building it to be a web application. That's just the way things are. Windows is the legacy world. It's going to have a long tail. It's not going away anytime soon. Legacy has a really long tail. And as long as enterprise companies keep using it, Microsoft will keep shilling it out to them and paying them license fees. But reality is most new applications are web applications. So I don't think there's a big push in the market to create an open source VDI delivery solution that delivers Windows, because Windows already has the ability to do that. So yeah, Citrix public applications. And of course, Citrix, their application publishing system is pretty extensive, and it's really Windows centric. If you set up pfSense device as a lab, your XCP-NG, how do you configure the LAN part of your pfSense VM guests or to use private network? We have a bunch of extra VLANs we create. That's our solution to it. VLANs is the magic I like to do. Tuning in a bit late from New York City. I'm assuming that you mean. Hello, Tom. Greetings there, Charles. So filter to Tom, maybe. Tom's projects? I don't know. There's a lot of things in here. There's one of them. What we do for ourselves is I should probably rename it, because they're in the studio still, but they're just Studio 100 and Studio 200 used to be physically in the studio. That's not exactly true anymore, but the concept's still the same. So if we look over here, we go to pool and we look at networks, and we have a lot of networks. What I do is I just keep building more and more networks, and there's our studio one. We just assign VLANs to things. So this is VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. We have a VLAN 1200 as well, apparently, a VLAN 10, and of course, a VLAN 69. What we do is we just keep building more and more VLANs. So you pick the interface, physical interface that those are going to go to. You define a new VLAN. That's how I assign all of them. So if you looked at, switch these back over to Tom's projects. And yes, I am playing with pfSense 2.7 development. You'll see on the networks, I assign first the main one is WAN. So if we look at the console here, there's our WAN assigned to XN0 and it's assigned to an IP address. Then LAN, XN2, and opt is just not set yet. XN1 and XN2, those are going to be these. They go in order. So VIF0, VIF1, VIF2. They're always assigned to different VLANs. And then, and for example, let's go ahead and show you how this works. So this is assigned here. If we look at the console, one more time, 192.168.29.1. So let's go over here. Let's go over to really anything. Network. Studio 100. We're going to change this network dynamically. We're going to watch the IP address go from 3.158. I got to let it. We'll just sit here and chat while this updates the network interface. Actually, we should probably zoom it in here. Well, this is also assuming that Tom has DHCP set up. I don't know if I do. We're going to find out if Tom has DHCP configured or not. There's a chance I don't. Oh, we do. So it is configured. All right. It just hasn't updated yet. I seen the IP address has changed. Here, I'll force it to change. We'll just reboot it. Hey, look, there it is. 192.168.29.11. Oh, now I rebooted it. So whatever, it changes. That's how you assign VLANs, though. I know VMware and XDP pretty well. I've used both of Home Lab, not much of the current hypervisor, but the company's looking to move more on-site. Thanks for the insight. Awesome. Yeah, so government BS. Oh, yes, government loves legacy stuff. It is Jason. Ah, yes. Apparently you can allow gifts. Let's just make you an administrator. Jason Slagle is my well, until a few days from now, he's going to be my unbearded friend. Do you want to join, Jason? I can always send you a link. Thank you so much for showing an answer to my question. While we wait, hit that like button. Do you know anyone who uses a hypervisor XP and Proxmox within their Linode environment? No. I mean, maybe someone does, but I don't know anyone who does. Or is it standard practice to use a cloud provider to provide manage VMs? Yeah, usually you're going to use a cloud provider's one, but a lot of people do rent colo space, and then will use something like XTPNG. That's more common. My question may not make sense. I'm clearly unfamiliar with the cloud hosting. Yeah, you generally use the cloud provider's hosting for things. Actually, if he's bored and wants to join, our friend Jason Slagle can certainly talk a lot about that. He's been in the enterprise hosting environment for a long time. He also runs an MSP as well. That's me and him hang out and talk all kinds of fun stuff. Jason Slagle's fun. Over provisioning VM memory. That's the next topic we're going to talk about. I recorded the video, but I didn't edit it yet. We actually have a set of over provisioned systems right now, and DMU Summer. All right, I think I can just send you this link. I'll send it over Signal. Where's Jason Slagle at? There we go. There. If a random Slagle appears, I think that link is how I invite people. Let me look. Is that the same link? Yeah. All right. If you click the link, you'll show Jason. Jason will appear. Actually, I'm gonna turn. I have a heater on. I don't know if you guys can even hear it. I have a little space heater. Ouch. Under my desk. All right. Let's talk about over provisioning memory. That's actually the video I just recorded. Was how to deal with this. So we have. I'm not going to break anything this time. I hope. I showed the what happens when you break things. So currently we have this system that has 128 gigs of RAM, and it's all allocated. We have this machine has 13 gigs. This one has about 64 gigs. I don't know. Let's expand these. Yeah, 64 gigs assigned to Windows. 16 gigs here, but this one lives on Ryzen 2. And we want to move it over to, this one's on Ryzen 1. We have 16 gigs of RAM assigned to it. We want to push it to Ryzen 2 and see what happens with the memory allocation. Because right now, if we go over to the host Ryzen 2, there's no free memory. We shouldn't be able to move that over, but we can. And this is the video that I'll have released tomorrow. We're going to move it over here. And while it's moving, let's see if I can pull it up prior to this going. Oh, want to join my live stream, honey?
No.
Okay. We're doing a live migration here. What's the rule of thumb for memory? Oh, there's a Jason. Hey, Jason.
What's up?
The rule of thumb for memory is have lots of it, because migrating VMs when you don't have enough memory takes longer than when you have plenty of memory, because it's resizing them all right now and it's slowly doing this. Me and Jason were talking about this earlier. I guess this is a as you would say, a common use case in VMware of over provisioning memory to a system.
Yeah, memory is the thing that we're typically bound by. Like, I'm never out of CPU. I'm always out of memory.
Yes. What do you consider lower and upper limits for a hypervisor? How do you calculate that? This is where the one thing I haven't 100% understood in Zen, I did the video, but I just didn't address the part I didn't understand. When, like, I have all these VMs right here. I don't know how it decided Windows only gets 45 gigs. It gave this one 12 gigs. It gave this one 13 gigs. I can probably actually just duplicate it under VM and see it slowly takes away from Windows, but it kind of does it like in a percentage basis. I also figured out how to crash a migration. If you run stressng in Linux, it won't give up the memory. And if you remember that evacuation thing we talked about, when you set the minimum, when you do a live migration, it reduces the memory to whatever you set the dynamic min to. And if that dynamic min's below the threshold, it just won't migrate the VM. It just locks up. It doesn't lock up. It gives an error. So it doesn't leave you in a non-running state. It sits there and spins for a long time, which I thought was kind of an interesting outcome. But let's clone this real quick. So we'll do a fast clone. So my clones, yeah. So let's go ahead and start this on Ryzen 2. And we'll start the other one on Ryzen 2. Ooh, whoops, wrong button. Oh, whatever. It'll start on Ryzen 1 and I'll migrate it. Make it more interesting. And we'll watch it shuffle all the memory. Oh. For shutdown. You said you built a Zen lab?
Yeah, we have one now.
Sweet. You can break things like I am.
Oh man, so most of my Zen experience recently has been dealing with an Oracle data appliance, and it's like crippled Zen. It's not fun. Now, newer Oracle data appliances ditched Zen and went to KVM, but this is like a little bit older one that still running Zen. And yeah, some of the like goat blood sacrifices we had to do like backups of the VMs, like we're doing things that you're not supposed to do to get snapshots.
So this is what's fun. Normally these VMs start instantly, but they pause now because what it just did was it reduced all the memory in Windows. It sacrificed Windows memory. What is Windows down to?
So I presume Zen supports like swapping, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yep.
So it's just ballooning it out. It seems to be more aggressive than VMware is.
Yeah, it just ballooned both of those down. So now Windows went from 44 gigs to 35 gigs, and Ubuntu's down to, this one's got 12 gigs, this one's got 9 gigs, and this one's got 14 gigs. I don't know how it comes up with that. That's the only part I don't really have a direct answer for. Like, whoever started first gets to keep their memory and more of it.
So normally it's up to the guest OS to like decide what it can give back, right? So essentially, at some point or another, it will balloon it down because this is a driver that's doing it, right? So
Yeah.
it has rule over the user space processes, but at some point you're just going to force all of user space into swap.
Yeah. Someone says, instead of technical debt, this is memory debt. Yes, it is. Yeah, I now understand after I ran that stress NG, I can reproduce what the client was having a problem with. And I think it's really kind of a simple thing. They have to look at their workload on each of the VMs. They have I think they're over 100 VMs they have so far. And they just have to set this dynamic to not below that. Because like the dynamic right here, 816, it will reduce it to 8 when it does the migration for live and then let it balloon up to 16. I don't run into any problems dynamically changing it on the same host, but that migration, when you migrate this over to another host, that's definitely where I notice problems. Let's see, which one of these did I have? I think none of them. Yeah, so we'll run LTS, HTOP on it. So this one only has 9 gigs of RAM, but if we migrate it to another host, so as it's migrating, see, it just reduced it. It's reducing it down to whatever that minimum is, the balloon process, and then it's
Whoa, hold on. Oh, that's completely different than how VMware works.
Is it? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so VMware doesn't actually reduce the amount of like memory available to the OS. It just the driver forces it to like basically give up file system cache and stuff. So VMware keeps a map of what memory the OS is actually using. So it'll force it to eject it via the kernel driver, but the actual amount of memory present to the OS doesn't actually ever change. So the OS still thinks it has 32 gigs of RAM if it's 32 and we balloon it down to 16. It's just that the driver takes up 16 of it.
See, it went all the way down to the minimum of 4 gigs, and now it goes back up to 16 because now it's on the next server.
Wow. What does dmessage look like?
What's that?
Is this the guest or the host?
This is the guest.
What's dmessage look like? I mean, is it just swapped with like, oh, dynamic RAM limit changed?
Yeah, let's look because that is curiosity.
What does the kernel think just happened? It's like, what is going on here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never thought to look at dmessage. Granting tables, freezable tasks. That's there. That's kind of neat.
Okay, so the guest is aware that it's being moved then.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And this works for Windows too.
Yeah. Does it work for versions of Windows that don't support dynamic memory resizing?
Probably not.
Okay.
My favorite part is this negative memory thing. Yeah. We have negative 5 gigs of RAM available. So yeah, it definitely works different.
It definitely works different.
And how do you weight the priorities or overpushing? I don't think you can weight them.
Yeah.
Not that I found, and maybe after I do the video, I'll reach out to Oliver and his team and ask if there's a way on there. So Hyper-V calls it mem pressure.
Yeah, so does VMware does too.
Now do Proxmox. No. Do you still have your Proxmox cluster, or did you replace it?
Yeah, I have a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a cluster, so I also have VMware running here, so because one advantage, if you actually end up in the VMware ecosystem, if you join the VMware Users Group Advantage program, which is like $100 a year, maybe 200. It's not that expensive. They give you a free vCenter license, so you can actually run a VMware in your home lab.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You think they'll increase the license fee for that? Because
probably. They'll probably just get rid of it. Honestly, like you'll have to buy some sort of like dongle to be able to use VMware now. They got to sell that hardware somehow.
Now, here's one thing that's very different. Actually, we'll stop this one too. If you go in here and we set it back to like normal behavior. We set the, we'll leave that at 6. Well, we'll set it 8. So if the dynamic and the if the memory limits for dynamic are the low limit and high limit are the same, we'll go ahead and start this one back up. It doesn't do any changes. So it's going to boot up. Give it a second. Ubuntu's got this weird blank screen pause thing it does. Do you use a Citrix management tool or tools in your VM guest? For Linux, I use the open source tools. For Windows, I'm still using the open source ones, but sometimes I'll load the Citrix ones. The Citrix ones receive more updates than the open source ones. They don't. The Vates team doesn't have a good developer, and I seen people complaining about it, and I thought it was kind of stupid because you're like, oh, Tom, I only want to use the open source management tool on my Windows. I'm like, why? You're running a closed source OS. Does it matter? Whoever has the best drivers, like, just run those.
I only want to run the open source graphics driver because I'd like my life to be 30% less good.
Yeah. I mean, their own admission is they even tell you in the forums, they're like, yeah, just run the Citrix ones if you want the latest driver. Citrix has the latest driver. They have Citrix has more Windows employees to keep that up to date. They actually work hand in hand with Citrix because they pass things back and forth between each other for who does what. Like Vates, they don't work in a vacuum. Citrix contributes upstream, Vates contributes upstream, but they actually talk to each other about what they're going to be contributing so they don't like overlap project ideas, because why waste the resources when you're trying to improve? Because like the TPM stuff is going to come out in 8.3 for both Citrix and XCP-ng, and it's kind of a collaborative project to get the TPM working properly. But now that they're both have the same limits, let me zoom it back in so you can see. So now if I do a migration, it happens in seconds. So it's on Ryzen 2. If I move it over to Ryzen 1, I hit OK. Literally, it's already 4, 3, 2, 1. And I think I timed it because these count faster than actual seconds. So I don't know. I know it takes less than 10 seconds to migrate between the hosts.
Yeah, 25 gig is nice.
Yeah, 25 gig is nice. Now it's on the other host, but it never does the reduction thing when it does it. So it's the memory usage is steady the whole time. Can you over provision CPUs too? You can't really take away CPU cores on the fly, can you? No, you can't do it live.
Yes, you can.
What's that?
Linux for sure supports hot add removing CPUs.
Does it?
Yeah.
Let's find out. I mean, I can do this. I know I can dynamically resize the memory live. That works fine. It does I'm going to shrink this down. All right. And it shrinks it relatively fast. I don't think I can do this though.
Yeah, you have to. So I mean, the guest OS has to, and even in VMware, it's like a advanced option you have to turn on to be able to do that.
I don't think there's an advanced option so I can live swap cores.
Because I could definitely hot add cores on VMware. I've not hot removed them, but Linux does support hot removing cores, I believe.
Really?
But so to answer the guy's direct question, you 100% could over provision CPUs
Yes.
because there's a scheduler and you just like stuff gets scheduled less, right? So it's not like you're allocating a CPU or a core to a thing. This is like a time sharing system where you get time slices that your stuff actually executes. And if you over provision, everyone just gets less.
Yeah. So if I go here and I say 24 cores on this one, where's it going to start at? Start it on Ryzen 1. Actually, I'll migrate it over to, well, whatever. I can run it on that one too. So if we had 24 cores to this one, start on Ryzen 1. Then we go to this one, we hit 24 cores.
I just confirmed that I'm not crazy. Linux for sure supports hot remove CPU.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I've never tried to do that. So
does Zen not support hot add CPU?
No, it's not a feature. I don't know of a way to do it. I had a question yesterday, forgot it. No, of course. Thanks for the videos. Well, Can you use open source driver with Citrix management tools, or do you need the Citrix driver with Citrix management tool? Can you use open source drivers? The Citrix management is not open source. The one in Windows isn't. You don't need the Citrix tools in Linux. You can just install the Linux versions of the stuff. It works fine. So figure out how.
I'm sending you stuff on Slack because Signal's not on the PC. So
too many windows open. There's Slack. Oh, so someone actually has a way to do this.
Yeah, it looks like it's supported too. You just have to have a max set in the config.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it can be done. That's interesting.
And both add and remove.
Huh. Well, that's cool. But here's what it looks like over provision. It just does it. There's no magic to it. Now, it's actually not a bad thing, because if you're thinking about from an architectural design standpoint, as long as all of your VMs don't need all the cores all at the same time, and even when they do, it actually figures it out pretty good. I ran the I think it was the Queen's test in Phoronix, because it pins all the CPUs really, really well and evenly. If you run it on an individual machine, I got a score of X. If you run it on two machines with duplicated cores provisioned, what I thought was weird is I got 51% of the performance. So it actually gave me a 1% boost, which that's within margin of error, so it's not substantial, but that shows me the scheduler was actually more even than I thought. My assumption is actually I would have gotten below 50% on each one, because by flushing the cache on the processor, it would just be inefficient.
Oh,
but
that's not a thing these days. Well. I mean, modern processors, these are, assuming it was this box, these boxes have so much hardware assisted virtualization support that it may not unload anything. It may just allocate different chunks of it. It just may allocate unallocated cache, for instance. And a lot of the memory maps and stuff these days are just loaded, like they're just kept in the host memory. It's not like it used to be where you're giving up like 10% performance. Like a mode 0 hypervisor is like 2% at most hit over bare hardware.
Yeah, it's actually that's another question that comes up is, should I run something on bare metal or put a hypervisor in between? I'm like, the hypervisors just don't have the overhead they used to have. They it isn't like the early days of this. This is like, I mean, even Zen's been around, I think, since 2004 or 5. Like, it's not that new.
I mean, the most common and supported way of running, say, OpenStack is actually running OpenStack on a hypervisor with OpenStack underneath it. So you're actually doing 2 levels of virtualization.
And it just works like magic.
It just works.
It just works. Here's a security question I get a lot, and I think you are more well-versed in this. How do you feel about the security of Docker containers versus virtualization? I always feel like virtualization just better isolates things independently from there. I worry more about with Docker.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is my knowledge here is dated, so it's going to be hard. The question becomes how to get to like ring 0, right? So a hypervisor escape is really, really, really difficult versus a Linux like kernel LCI escape. It's like you're in the same kernel, right? So like you don't have to go up as far to get over.
The boundary seems very thin. Like, just from this, like, we're talking about this high level. When you talk about Dockering something or any Linux containerization platform, once you share the kernel, it also feels like resource scheduling. I know there's tools for it. It's so much easier in a virtual machine by comparison to when you're sharing a kernel. Like, the networking is also, someone posted in my forums today asking about using, as I started playing with Portainer, and Portainer is pretty cool if you haven't played with it. But man, the networking in it's still got some bugs. Like,
I mean, if you go configure some Kubernetes up and tell me how you feel about networking. I mean, that gets really complicated really quick when you start doing stuff like that.
Yeah, if you don't need any of your Kubernetes things publicly, or I should say publicly, host level exposed with their own MAC address. It's easy.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to build a series of orchestrated containers that talk to each other, and then only one thing is port forwarded through, and then you have some type of load balancing proxy on there and the front end to sort it all out, like HA proxy. Awesome,
Yeah.
it works. The moment you start saying, and this was the example someone wanted, is like, hey, and we all know why we run privacy VPNs, because we're sailing the seas of piracy. And you want to run your whatever's downloading your torrents. People are like, oh, I want to run as a Docker image. I said, well, the problem is if you want to set up privacy VPNs, usually you're going to do your routing in pfSense based on IP address, not port numbers. So how do you get that? Whatever your torrenting tool, transmission, deluge, whatever, how do you get it assigned its own IP address? That's not easy in Docker.
It's possible.
It's possible though.
I think somebody YouTuber had a really good video on it recently. I forget who it was.
Yeah, but that's where things get just a lot more complicated. Can Zen Orchestra do vMotion on 2 storage, even if storage cannot see each other directly? As long as they can both see, and Zen Orchestra can talk to them, and the interfaces have to talk to each other. Like there has to be a level where the devices have to be able to see each other, the 2 separate pools. You can actually live migrate between 2 completely separate storage pools. You just have to choose when you're doing the migration. One of the things that when you migrate, like this is a different pool altogether, you have to choose the migration network. So you have to choose a migration network where things can talk to each other. So yes, you can do that. Yes, it'll do, as VMware calls it, vMotion, to completely just 2 different things. As long as they're the same version, by the way. If you try to take a Zen server like running 8.2 and move a VM to a 7 version, you're going to have a bad time. I think it gives an error. So, but yes.
Well, an error is not a bad time. It's just an error. A bad time would be like it starts and then like suddenly cats or dogs.
Leaves you in an unknown state. Yeah.
That would be something that one of Matt's guys would do.
Yeah.
He's in the chat, so I'm waiting for him to comment now.
Oh,
it was Network Chuck with that video, by the way.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Mac VTAP. I think it's called Mac VLAN in Portainer. As a matter of fact, why don't I pull up my Portainer instance and find that out?
Probably those sound like 2 different things. So I would expect Mac VTAP to use a tap driver. I would expect Mac VLAN to just expose a VLAN. There's probably another one.
Yeah, and I think in Portainer, let me find my login for it and pull it up. What was the IP address this thing? 9443, that sounds right. Drop it.
Mac VTAP. Okay. Yeah, it's bridged. Mac VTAP is bridged. Okay.
Yeah, because you go to networks, add network.
That's new. I haven't messed with that much.
I have not played much with Portainer. I started goofing with it because it's kind of cool. And the question someone had, and it's when you have your things running in your stack, which, by the way, WebTop is awesome if you haven't played with it. That was my coolest one I got set up so far. It lets you run an entire operating system, all browser enabled. It was pretty cool. Fun. Yeah, it's there's a couple good videos on it. Now I forgot how to get to it. Is it there? Oh,
ooh, that's a pretty big use case there.
This is a cool use case.
Oh, the guy in chat.
I want to run like 16 Vios routers on a 4-core CPU with 30 gig memory in order to test OSPF and some network traffic monitoring. Yeah, that's some learning there.
Yeah, I mean, you could pretend you're doing the CCIE and also run RIP and BGP on all of them and make sure you redistribute between all of it with no loops.
That is a lot. But the WebTop lets you run these fully working virtual machines that are
kind of cool.
Yeah, this is really cool. If you look up, it's called just WebTop.
I mean, I presume it's just running it underneath and it's using like some sort of like web-based VNC type thing to actually expose it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is all being done in my browser. That's what's so cool. This is all 100% in my. Like if I showed the whole screen, all this is going to the IP address colon at 3000 is the port number I have it mapped to, and it just runs like I think it's running guacamole.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that looks
which
like.
it's just fascinating to me that it works so well. Like it's just like we're just gonna give you a quick guacamole session, and you can run these, and it's a full running Linux VM that you can, it's all done in Docker, so they're all ephemeral. And I can just blow it away after I test or detonate something, for example.
Yeah, I was gonna say that use case for that is definitely threat research.
Yeah, threat research. So that's why I want to start playing with it, because once I seen the web top, I seen someone do a video on it. I'm like, oh, that's neat. I can just instantly build it, destroy it when I'm done. Like, is this URL good or bad? The problem is, like, what were you testing? I think we were playing with Finn. One of my staff had did that, and Finn's like, you clicked on a phishing link, and like, no, we opened it up in a temporary VM. I mean, we just want to know what it did, so we didn't really click it. We clicked it outside of our normal purview of things.
He'll get me one day, but I'm gonna be loading it in like links. It's like, oh no, I clicked the phishing link from links, a text-based browser with no JavaScript support.
Yeah, agent ID
Yeah.
links.
I didn't actually load it. I just telnetted and did git/http1/ and hit enter a couple times, and it popped out. I don't.
What is that other tool out there? Chasm, KASM. You ever looked at that? So Chasm is kind of cool. They actually reached out to me, wanted me to do a sponsored thing. As I drop my empty beer. And I actually replied to them, and they didn't reply to me. The container streaming platform. They're basically the same thing like I talked about WebTop, but they can create an individual container for something like Chrome, Brave. They're like application containers, but
I mean,
they run with a
that's
Linux
cool.
backend.
Yeah, I mean, I think something like that's cool because then even if you manage a sandbox escape of like Chrome, right? Like, what are you going to infect? The container that's going to go away when Chrome dies? I mean, who cares?
And that's what's kind of cool. It has a local free community edition, so you can build this in your own lab. But even with the free community edition, you can build it somewhere like Linode or DigitalOcean. So cool, it's out in their environment. It's abstracted from me quite far away. I log into it. I watch what it does. Cool, that's interesting. That looks terrible. So I'm glad I didn't run on my computer. Yeah, I think those are some pretty cool use cases coming up for doing that. I've actually seen someone pitch this. I don't know it ever really went far. I've seen companies running like virtualized Windows that way through it. That way they could instantly rewind things, so to speak, if anything went wrong. I just don't think that's cost efficient to run. Like, cool idea. It would do all the security things we dream about, but then it costs too much money.
I mean, people do VDIs all the time, and we're actually setting that up at work so that I don't have to run my full stack on all of the employees' computers if they're like working from home and want to use their own computer instead of their laptop. Instead, they'll just VDI into the VDI cluster and they'll work from there.
What are you using for that?
WVD.
Okay.
Azure. Yeah.
How's the bill?
Yes. I mean, so we're silver with Microsoft, and one of the things that gets me $500 a month worth of free Azure credit. So we're only exceeding that by a little bit in our testing. So
They keep it reasonable.
yeah.
I know there's a popular article floating around about how we saved a bunch of money by taking it out of the cloud. There's some
yeah. We're seeing that. I mean, I see that all over. People think the cloud is this magic thing that somehow they can just poof, like hardware. There's a DALI image for this for sure. Like hardware appearing from the sky. Somebody still has to buy and maintain it, and yeah, they can do it at scale, so they can do it cheaper than you can, but they still have to do it, and they have to make money. So I am seeing companies, especially that lift and shift, right? It's like instead of making a cloud architected app, it's like we're just going to pick up all this data center, move it to the cloud, and then they get the first bill, and they're like, yeah, we're going to move that back.
Yeah. I talked to I know the guys over at Altair Engineering, and they started telling me some of their cloud prices. I'm like, what? I'm like, you could buy a house every month for that. And they're like,
Oh,
yeah,
way more than that. Yeah, the big enterprisey client, that we work with, their cloud bill is definitely 7 figures a month. So
yeah. It's Patrick from Serve the Home. I told him he should do it. I was talking to him and I told him he should do an updated one. He did a while ago. I didn't realize their forums had that much bandwidth being pulled from them. He has a breakdown of that though, and he has a HAPF sense set up with a I forget what he's using. He might be using XCP-ng or VMware for it, but on the back end side of it, though, just hosting the sites he hosts. I mean, he was talking about several $1,000s a month being spent on. Well, no, I think he said it went from like 10,000 down to like $1,000 a month when he moved to a colo.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
we were just talking about that. So I do stuff at Azure, I do stuff at AWS, but I also own a hosting environment, right? It's VMware on the back end, we're using their cloud stuff. And we've moved some client stuff to Azure, and some of it I'm like, you know what? It would be cheaper for us and the client if we just ran this in our instance of VMware rather than at Azure.
yeah. I should move some of my stuff over to your hosting environment too, eventually.
Yeah, you probably get a deal.
Yeah, I think you give me a good price. We've been migrating some of these things back and forth because Comcast has been less than great. We think we may have narrowed it down on our building, but we in the short term we actually just put a WoW connection in with static IPs, and we got so sick of Screen Connect going down, we just moved Screen Connect over to our WoW connection, and it's been better.
Mhm.
We're not even in like the high business one from them. We're like, this is just aggravating.
Yeah, we're pulling the last bit of stuff. The only stuff left in our building once we finish our move will only be lab stuff and a domain controller. So, although maybe not a domain controller because everything is Azure AD joined now.
Yeah, I don't got one of those fancy domain controllers. Actually, you haven't been to the office in a minute. We finally, I was going to share this with the people. We finally got all this look pretty. We finished it today last night. So we've all this stuff that was shit everywhere when you were at my office and seen it. We finally like put it together. So we still got the Christmas lights up though. I came in, I seen Brett sitting there. I'm like, oh, this is actually nice looking now.
That looks good. I think last time I was there, the door was by the other rack, so the rack in the back was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still pieces left of it. We still got a couple servers to pull out. So I'll do an updated office tour. It's just been so hard. And then, as you know, we had employee drama. So that causes disruptions in actually getting projects done. Such is life. They don't watch the YouTubes. They don't know I'm making fun of them.
I just openly make fun of my guys.
Yeah, that's always fun too. The people demand Tube City. What?
Tube City sounds probably not rated PG.
Yeah. Shiny. Well, the important part is that everything's filled with lights. Matter of fact, these lights are dynamic. Is there a picture of the controller? You can barely see it sitting here. Steve bolted to the top of here. That's the controller, and these LED lights that are inside of here, they're dynamic and can be changed different colors. They're actually on like one of those like soft rotating colors.
Yeah, I was on a huddle with Brett earlier, and it was only a little bit distracting.
Yeah, he likes his LED lights. Oh, there's at least one employee who watches the live streams.
Oh, yeah, he does. He does. You should see how he speaks about him in person.
And there's you got your Matt with you, and then Travis with me. Fun stuff. I'm looking forward. Me and Jason will be at the he's going to the you're not going to the Acronis event, are you?
I am not. I'm going to the Ingram event at the same time. It's like a week of events. It's weird.
Yeah.
And now there's a bunch of like
me and Ray are driving to the next one. So
that'll be fun. That drive's not terrible. It's about 3.5 hours.
Yeah. And I like Ray. So we'll have plenty
fun.
of things to BS about. Who's going? The only person from my office going is Brett. I'm not taking any other people.
You have to go to Gurkon to meet his other employees.
Yes, Eric went to GurCon. None of the other employees wanted to go to GurCon, just Eric. And I don't know if any of them really want to go to IT Nation. I didn't really ask either. I just took Brett. Someone's got to actually work.
MSP GeekCon would be the one to send him to.
Yeah.
Or Write a Boom. You've got a couple that probably like to go to Write a Boom.
Yeah, I probably a couple. Write a Boom sounds interesting. I'm trying to decide. I should probably go to that. I think
You're
you've talked
probably
me
going
into
to
it.
that.
That's in Texas, right?
Yes, Dallas.
Never been to Dallas, so
Neither have I. Been to Austin and San Antonio, but never Dallas.
So that's gonna be fun. I need to travel more. Hasn't been a lot on my list. Oh, so it's new and exciting right now in security. 'Cause besides that, I liked your write up on the because I actually thought about bringing you on for just this because I was going to title it and I'm like I forgot to ask Jason the whole Huntress and R1 soft. There's a couple questions. I think you see me discussing it with the people. Me and you are both inside with the Huntress stuff, and one of the questions I had, and I directly asked you, is why do so many people have ports open?
I mean, pop Shodan open. And let me find my queries. So to answer your question directly, this was targeted essentially at hosting providers, right? And so hosting providers, many times, they just don't have another network. Well, here, run this query first. Hold on, I gotta find it. I had it. Run this one.
Send it over
This
Slack.
is coming on Slack again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So and the reason I'm having, do you have an account? You may not be able to run it if you don't have an account.
Oh yeah, I do. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't want to throw my email address out there that I use to log into this.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, it uses username, not that. So cool.
So look at the organizations if you scroll down on the left there. It's all hosting providers.
GigaHost, SK Broadband.
Yeah. So what we figured out is that almost every one of these is a hosting provider. Like none of them, we couldn't find a single MSP on the list. We did find at least one government agency. But I mean, we spent a little bit going through this list here, and so
I like that name.
I'm gonna make a new company called 25 Shells, and I say I have one more than 24 shells. Man, I'd have to install ZSH, BAT. 25 would be hard to get to. The reason is there's no back network, right? So these are places running giant like cPanel or Plesk farms, right? And they're AWS VMs that have one interface, right? They don't have like a backup network for this traffic to go over. So they could IP restrict them, which would probably make sense, but that would require like this isn't going to do that out of the box, right? So this requires a level of knowledge that I think most people that are running a lot of these things don't have. I mean, and given the pennant, we probably shouldn't show people too much how to find there's no proof of concept. The patch rate is pretty low so far from what I've been told. So because hosting providers, they turn off auto updates typically, and they're not necessarily have the greatest history for keeping things up to date.
Yeah, and that's where some of the problems come in with this. And your write-up too made me think about it because you talked about the coordination behind the scenes that had to go on to get this proof of concept out. I think so. That was your LinkedIn article you posted like the other day, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on behind there that I think the public needs to understand of how the vulnerability disclosure process goes. And it's not that these companies want to ignore things. It's more that there's so many things thrown at them all the time. They have to figure out which ones are credible. And
or in the case of this is actually an acquisition of an acquisition. And so if you email either of the previous owners of the company, the infrastructure is it probably still exists, but it's not out there, right? So emailing security at r1soft.com, it might as well email DevNull. I mean, there's just no one listening to that email. It's fixed now because the security team didn't even necessarily knew they owned that product. It's so far removed from them, right? So it's like, oh yeah, oh man, we bought that guy that bought that thing. Yeah, we're not using that, right? So in that case, it was that. I don't think they willfully ignored them. I think that the messages just never got to the security team because the only resources left from the former company are marketing.
Right. It's been a couple years, but me and Xavier talked about this once. Someone claimed to have a major flaw they found in the pfSense dashboard that gave them privileges. And it was funny because they tried to get it assigned CV. They submitted it. I forget where they submitted it at. And they did a whole write up like it was a big deal. But as I went through it, at first it's like, this sounds really concerning. But then after I dig into it, I stared at it and I'm like, this is really stupid. You know what the role of the requirements was you had to have the root password in order to exploit it. I'm like, why would I use an exploit if I have the root password? Like I completely, and this person had like a whole blog write up about it. Like they were trying to tweet it, tag me in the tweets. And I'm like, what do you think you have here, buddy? Like you need the root password.
Yeah.
Like if I have the root password, why don't I just use the web interface? Because he found a way you could do injection in a root in the web interface by calling a certain function, but you had to send the password with it to do it. And I'm just like, I imagine from like if you're HackerOne, like there's a big problem. They have triaging all the BS that comes in.
And you still need that fixed. And the reason you still need that fixed is like that's like the type of thing that somebody just doesn't fix and then something gets chained in front of it and now it's relevant, right? So like in this case, maybe you need the root password to bypass some sort of authentication check somewhere of something. Well, now you find an authentication bypass and chain it to that thing and suddenly you're in. Right. So like you can't you
can't ignore them.
Yeah.
But it's also it's weird how some of the people do some of the things. I imagine it's like triaging is probably. I would actually like to hear from some of the people at HackerOne talk about like some of the crazy things that are thrown at them and how many. Like, what is that? What is that number? What's your signal to noise ratio? I mean, you get the people you know. If Tavis Ormandy from Google's Project Zero says something's wrong, I believe the guy. Whatever he's talking about, like he finds some really clever hacks out there. But if you don't know who this person is, then it becomes a little bit, there's a lot of validation that's got to go in. Is this a real attack? Is it reproducible? I think that's the back end side of it is it's not as easy as people think because there's so many people involved in this.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, do you have a HackerOne account, I presume?
I actually don't.
Okay.
So I don't ever, I should do that. I usually, whenever I find something wrong, like I was discussing earlier, I just reach out in forums. So I'm usually not doing security problems. I'm just finding bugs. So like I did with the, they were missing some packages in Zen Orchestra that didn't allow the logging export to work. So like they fixed it. And now they have a pull request on GitHub. And I feel like I did my part in contributing to open source.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot like the big companies on HackerOne. It's very active, and
yeah.
I mean, you have to have a team to triage that stuff. But there's also a bunch of scammers, right? Like one of the things I've talked quite a bit about is that I believe that threat researchers deserve to get paid, and when they find vulnerabilities and things, right? It's like everyone's like, well, they're just extorting me or blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, they don't work for free, right? Like they throw 1% of your marketing budget that you'll spend on PR when this goes bad, throw that into paying those people. It'll be fine. But the other side of that is there are a bunch of drive-by people that, like I had one, I've got this guy, he's been just periodically emailing me. He emailed me like 3 months ago and he's like, you don't have a DMARC record and an SPF record. And as a result, I can spoof, blah, blah. I'm like, well, that's not true. I have both of those things. Okay, DMARC was set to quarantine. I set it to reject because he emailed me. But the guy's asking for a bounty. Like, so apparently he's just emailing everyone saying they don't have SPF and DMARC, and that's somehow a vulnerability. Like, maybe that's an active decision. It's a dumb decision, but maybe I know I don't have that, but that's not a bountyable vulnerability. Are you kidding me?
I think the weirdest one is I got trolled on I got trolled on someone saying, "Tom, you think you're a cybersecurity guy, but you don't know you have a problem." And he kept commenting on different random videos saying similar words. And then he says, "I should probably give you a hint because you still haven't fixed your problem." And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't fixed a problem because you haven't told me what it is." And I replied to the guy, like, "Go ahead and troll me." And it turned out it was an A2 hosting problem, which was where my DNS was hosted. You could do a zone transfer
Oh,
to
zone transfer.
anywhere.
Yeah.
And I contacted A2 and I sent them, they said it's not a problem. And I sent them like, "Hey, this watch, I can initiate a zone transfer from anywhere to anywhere." And they're like, "Yeah, that's how we have our server set up now." And I'm like, "But they weren't like that before because I tested this." And they go, "Yeah, but we changed the configuration." I said, "Not anyone should be able to do a zone transfer." And they finally admitted and they fixed it and said ticket closed. I'm just like, but it was weird that
Yeah.
someone trolled me over it, which there's
I
not much
mean,
you can learn from a zone transfer for me,
yeah.
because it's just my lawrencesystems.com hosting. There's nothing real special from it.
Well, it just makes I don't have to use DNS dumpster if I can just go get it.
Yeah, and there wasn't anything in the zone transfer that wasn't in DNS dumpster. That's why I also was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, look, cpanel.lawrencesystems.com."
I mean,
Shocking.
oh, I found some test.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not important. I was supposed to not say it, but
Mhm. Um, Here's a good question, and the only tool I know that does this, so iPerf is great for just raw bandwidth testing. T-Rex by Cisco is an open source tool that does iMix traffic. I can't name another one. That's like what the people at Netgate actually use the T-Rex system. It's open source. You can find it on GitHub. T-Rex Cisco, I think, will find it for you. Rex. I'll
so
actually.
is the argument with iPerf that it's too high or too low?
Well, it doesn't really represent necessarily real traffic, I think is the
Yeah.
problem.
It doesn't use a mix of packet types and packet sizes, so it doesn't represent it doesn't represent typical traffic patterns.
Yeah. And I generally don't bother with setting up T-Rex because T-Rex is going to be iMix, so you get a more generalized idea for VPN speed, and that's what the people at Netgate use it for. But really, for any given client, you have to ask, what is that client doing? What's that client's workload? Will this VPN work for what they want to do? I start with iPerf. Okay, it can transfer at this speed and this rate. And then I start looking at what they're doing. Are they actually, tunneling all of their traffic? And it's a real demand for them. It's kind of like you got to look at things on a case by case basis. But T-Rex is the answer. I can't think, because this one's so popular, I don't think there's another one out there. And because it's free, no one's bothered writing another one.
There are things I think that are compatible with this too. I think it's using like a open source standard on the backside.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
T-Rex is the answer for that. There's probably forks of it, and I know there's a couple commercial tools out there. Because what they do is they're probably just building in that, but they give you some cool measurement tools on the other side, so you don't have to do your own calculations. I've always wondered why Phoronix doesn't get into that just at least a little bit. Like, I love the Phoronix tool set. I don't know if you've ever really played with it for testing, but it works so well.
Oh, I bought a Nimbot, by the way.
That stupid thing is mine's over here somewhere on my desk.
You can print pictures with it. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I ran around labeling the kids and my wife, with a picture of her, stuck it to her.
I can't believe how cheap that stupid thing is.
Yeah.
When someone else, one of my wiring guys was using it and he showed me that, I was just like, "It's how much?" That was the only thing I could say. It's like, no, it can't be that cheap. He's like, "Yeah, we just keep it in there," because he's got the fancy one. Like, he's got the fancy. What's that company that makes it?
Oh, brother.
Yeah,
Like a P Touch. Yeah, we have P Touch. Most of my guys have P Touches.
this is like the cheap. Keep it in your backpack.
Yeah, the P Touch wins in the fact that the labels are not thermal and they're not and they're laminated, right? Or so they're a little bit probably more durable than the Nimbot labels are.
But a cheap label is better than no label, so I like keeping it with me.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm trying to pull it up. Man, it's.
Oh, did you talk about OpenSSL? Someone just mentioned it in your comments there.
Oh,
The relatively nothing burger of it.
the big nothing burger.
Yeah. I want that one. I want that second one.
Oh, you want the second one?
Oh yeah, look at that. You can print like that's the one I should have gotten because then I could have printed us new barcodes for our badges.
Oh, that's better than
Yeah.
badge stealing. Just
Yes, right. So like I don't do I have somebody's badge around here? Yeah, you could use it to print different badges then. I thought I had Wes's on the desk here, but I don't see it.
so for those of you that don't know, Jason goes to events and steals people's badges.
Yeah, and just if you don't want me to take your badge, your conference better have ID check.
Better, yes.
And even if it has ID check, I might still end up with somebody else's badge. It's fun. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, that's a fun thing. You've also taken the ConnectWise CEO badge as well,
Oh,
right?
I'll have it next week.
That's the part I'm looking forward to. So we're going to a ConnectWise event, and Jason Slagle is going to acquire the ConnectWise CEO's badge, and that's what he'll wear.
Last year, it's secure. I mean, you were there. I had his whole family's badges accidentally. Like I had his, and then I walked up to get they printed passes for my kids to go to the go-karts, and then I walked up and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here. I heard you left some like badges for me, and I get handed a stack of them, and they all have the last name McGee, and I'm like giggling to myself, oh, that's a funny joke. And then I just ran into him later, and I was talking to him. I'm like, yeah, they gave me. I'm like, dude, thanks for getting my kids passes. They print them out, but the funny thing is, the last name's McGee on all of them. He's like, what are their first names? And I tell him, he's like, oh, that's my wife and kids. So
taking badges at conferences.
it's
I like
fun.
that we was a DattoCon we were at because they have colored lanyards.
Yeah.
And the colored lanyards get you places. So while we were all at the bar, you swapped the color of the lanyards from one of the vendors. So.
Still, I mean, I've done that a number of times, like because with the vendor one, you can get into the vendor hall and it's not open, right? So I want to go talk to people that are in there, and they're the only thing stopping me is the color of my badge or my lanyard. Of course, that's going to happen. But then there are places you can't get with that badge, so you have to keep both of them.
Yeah. Just acquire 2 badges. Most hacker cons don't care who you are just as long as you have a badge. Yeah, the ones at GerCon aren't labeled, so
yeah, there was not even a name.
Nope, no names on those or anything like that. The open SSL thing was just a big nothing burger, though. Everyone wanted to get excited about it.
It's not nothing, right? It's just that like you have to have both the client and the server have to be vulnerable in very particular ways. Like it's just very difficult to set up the conditions under which it's exploitable.
Yeah. Someone asked this question earlier. Have you guys had to deal with government secure systems with the idea of STIG?
I don't have any, but I'm aware of STIG, so
yeah. I had one, and a mutual friend of ours was debating because we were talking about FIPS compliance, and my point was, and I don't know, feel free to argue with me on this. pfSense has limited FIPS compliance. You can't use Squid because the Squid is not FIPS compliance. But if you're not using Squid, you're not doing traffic inspection, you're doing pfSense as a router, it is FIPS compliant. They use FIPS compliance encryption for like the username encryption and things like that. But it just doesn't do for traffic inspection. But we never use pfSense for traffic inspection because Squid's hot garbage. So trying to manage it's not like when someone says, I want to fully look at the SSL traffic or something like that. I'm going to tell you not to use pfSense.
I'm going to tell you not to do it because you just trade one problem for a different problem.
Yeah. I do it at the endpoint level. That's where we do traffic inspection and management of that.
Or DNS, or DNS, or read the SNI header. Like these days, I don't need SSL. I can just read the SNI header to figure out what thing. I can't do block individual URLs then, but I can whack domains every day.
Yeah, and mostly the management is at the domain level, not the individual URL level. Like you're not going to this website. That's not work relevant.
Yeah.
And more tools don't like the man in the middle adding that extra certificate.
And to make it work, you end up having to install a trusted CA or trusted root certificate on every computer that's doing it. And if somebody happens to get a hold of that key, now now you're trusted everywhere, right? So there's it's just trading one set of problems for a different set of problems.
Yeah, you're changing your threat surface, and not in a good way. Well, I'm gonna wind this down, or I could
Yeah.
probably go forever BSing
Yeah.
about stuff, but maybe next time I'll schedule it. I decided to do it later at night because I was busy during the day, and it was so nice out. I went for a walk, so enjoy these last few days of fall.
Yeah, so we have fall, like warm fall, and then Florida, and I'm sure it'll be snowing when we get back somehow.
Yeah, when we get back, because Jason lives right by me. You're just barely south of Michigan, so the cold weather will be upon us. Then
Yep.
I'll hide. I make more videos in the winter, though. Some people are happy about that because I don't want to go outside. Yeah, not till spring, and then everything thaws out. Well, and then it's not just spring in Michigan. We have mud season. When I said that when they're talking about the Ukraine, they're like, it's mud season. I'm like, hey, we have that here too. So there's can't really go anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
not on your bike.
Not on my bike, at least. Nope, just for some walks. And you do geocaching, it's the same thing. You're like,
Yeah.
you don't want to swamp through the woods. So
Yeah, but it's also nice when there's not poison ivy and leaves and stuff. So like there's that fine line you walk there. Like snow is bad. The ground frozen with no snow is great.
yes, and no bugs. I'm not a
No
big mosquito
bugs.
fan. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for Jason for jumping in here, and I'll see everyone next time. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. All right, later.